Life is full of decisions. Some of them are routine, mundane, everyday, fairly insignificant. It doesn't really matter whether I choose cornflakes or Weetabix for breakfast. Who spent more than 5 minutes this morning working out what they were going to wear? I can't believe only one of you, but that would have been decisions there. I just wear my Sunday morning shirt, so that's not a problem. And of course, some decisions are insignificant, other decisions are more important. Some of our year 10s have sixth form open days happening in these next few weeks, and starting to think about what's next after GCSEs, A-levels, BTEC, apprenticeship, where they're going to do those. I don't know where the year 12s are in the whole university thing. Is that happening yet, or is that still to come? That's happening. So decisions on courses and places to do that. And so clearly some decisions are more important than others. And often we think about the importance of a decision based on the consequences or the outcome. The greater the consequences, then the more important the decision. And so typically there is no difference between me having cornflakes or Weetabix for breakfast. But a choice about my further education, then that might have a knock-on effect on what I'm able to do later in life. What job should I take? Where should I move to? These are decisions that could potentially shape and change our whole lives. If I hadn't taken a teaching job in Essex and decided to start going to a local Baptist church because they had a badminton club on a Wednesday, then I would have probably never met Sue. And so some of our choices have consequences, bigger consequences than other choices. And we have a lot more choices and decisions to make than the people that Paul was writing to in the first century. Most people back then had very few options open to them. But the most important decision or choice that they could make is also the most important decision or choice that we ever have to make. How am I going to respond to the good news of Jesus? And how we respond to that question doesn't just affect the here and the now. It affects, it has eternal consequences. And so Paul is perplexed. He's writing to these Christians and he's perplexed. They've decided to start following Jesus, but now they're turning away. Who's ever played Would You Rather? Okay, so there are 3 of you who have played. When I ask a question, if the answer in your head is yes, you need to put your hand up. A bit of interaction. So, for those of you that don't know, you're given 2 choices, and you have to choose one or the other. And so, the first one I've got for you. Would you rather have the ability to see 10 minutes into the future or 150 years into the future? So would you rather see 10 minutes into the future or 150 years into the future? Anyone got an answer? Anastasia? 10 minutes because? That's true. Okay, 150 unless you can make a difference. Okay, good. And so if you see someone at coffee time and you don't recognize them and you're unsure about what to ask them and how to start a conversation later, Ask them what their answer was to this question. Second one, would you rather be able to take back anything you have said or hear any conversation that is about you? If you think these are hard, you should see the ones that I didn't include. Anyone? Take back what you have, take back anything you've said. Anyone go for the other one? Okay, so a few of you went for the other option as well. Of course, there are no right or wrong answers. Third one, would you rather be able to speak any language or be able to communicate with animals? Who would prefer to speak any language? Okay, what about who would prefer to communicate with animals? Great. So there are a mix of answers. And throughout Galatians, Paul has been giving his readers a kind of would you rather quiz. Galatians was a letter written by this guy called Paul to Christians in an area called Galatia, and they were a number of small churches there that he was writing to. And he's been contrasting where they were before they became Christians with where they are now. And so, because they're choosing to go back to where they were before. And so Paul is saying, would you rather be free or be a slave? Would you rather have your relationship with God put right or not? Would you rather be rescued from the consequences of sin or not? Would you rather be worshipping the living God or a little statue that's made out of stone or wood? Would you rather be free from the law, or would you rather be under the law and have to do every single thing in the law? Would you rather know God or not? Would you rather be able to call God your Father or not? Would you rather have an inheritance and a hope for the future or not? This is, and Paul is presenting them with literally, and I use that word appropriately, literally life or death. I wonder, have you ever been in a position where you're trying to persuade a friend not to take a particular course of action, but they seem to be determined to go this particular way? Their mind is made up, but you and the rest of their friends can all see that this is a really bad choice that they are making, but they just won't listen. And that's the position that Paul is in here. He can't understand why these Christians in Galatia are ready to jettison everything that they have received because of Jesus. But now they're making some bad choices, and all of that is going to be thrown out. They're going to give up everything that they have because of everything they have because of Jesus. They're just going to get rid of all that and throw it all away. And in that list of would you rathers, it's almost as if they've gone down and they've ticked the wrong and the worst option every single time. Of course, there are lots of reasons why people might walk away from Jesus. There are reasons why a person might not choose to follow Jesus in the first place. That happened in the New Testament, and it continues to happen today. So can anyone think of any reasons why a person might choose not to follow Jesus? Okay, so maybe it means that you have to give things up and they're not prepared to give the things up. Bob? Okay, so they don't They don't believe that he is the person that we think he is. And so why would you follow him? Anyone else? Any other reasons why people might not follow? Sorry? Okay, so people want to live to a certain standard. Well, Jesus never pretended that following him was going to be easy or painless. And we shouldn't present following Jesus as being easy or painless. For example, here's a verse from Mark where Jesus says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple, they must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." One of the big issues facing the Christians in Galatia could well have been persecution. It's possible that they were being persecuted by their Roman neighbours, they were being persecuted by their Greek neighbours, and they were being persecuted by their Jewish neighbours. And one of the ways to make some of that a little bit easier may have been to blend in with the Jewish community, because the Jewish community had some protections within the Roman Empire. There were some exceptions that were made. There was some acknowledgement and recognition that they were different to everyone else. It may be possible that the Jewish community was coming under persecution and pressure because of these new Christians. The Romans saw these new Christians as being just a part of the Jewish faith, and so the Jews as a whole were being persecuted alongside the Christians. And so life would have been easier for the Jews and for the Christians if these Christians simply adopted some of the Jewish customs and they took those on alongside Jesus. But Paul makes it very clear that once you make your faith into belief in Jesus plus something else, then it is no longer news of the gospel. And for anyone who has chosen to follow Jesus, there is always a temptation to try to blend in, not to stand out, to fit in and not be seen as being different. And we know that this is true for all of us, but maybe it's a particular challenge for our young people. And so that when you're praying for our young people and for our children, one of the things that we can pray is that they have the courage to stand up and to be different and to stand out and to take a stand for Jesus. Who can tell me what zealous means? That's a word that came up in our reading. Can anyone tell me what zealous means? Passionate for a cause. Very good. I can see Anastasia's hand up, but I'm not going to ask her because she can see my next 3 slides. But passionate for a cause is good. I mean, if you look at the dictionary definition, you'll see that zealous helpfully means having or showing zeal, which only helps if you know what zeal means. But it does have some similar words. So things like fiery, passionate, devout, devoted, committed, dedicated, enthusiastic, eager, keen, sincere, wholehearted, purposeful, forceful, intense, and single-minded. And that's just some of them. I didn't put them all up there. And zeal, as Steve said, is having great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or an objective. And we probably know people who kind of fit into that category. Someone who is passionate for a cause. And you know when they open their mouth what's going to come out, because they're only ever banging on about the same thing. They seem to be passionate about it and zealous about it, and for those around them are maybe not quite so enthusiastic, it can all get a little bit trying and wearing. Jesus was certainly zealous. When Jesus went into the temple and he saw people there selling animals and changing money, which meant that people weren't able to use the space to pray, he kind of went on the rampage. He threw the tables over, money went everywhere, animals went everywhere, and the disciples linked these actions with a zeal for God. And in Romans, Paul says that as Christians we should never be lacking in zeal, but we should keep our spiritual fervour serving the Lord. And when Paul looked back on his own life, he acknowledges that there was a time when he was zealous in persecuting the church and Christians. That was he was driven and focused. He'd hunted these Christians down, he put them in prison, had them executed. But now he is zealous for Jesus. And Paul recognizes that these people that have come to the Christians in Galatia, they're certainly zealous, but they're wrong. They're pouring their energy into something that is not true, something that is not right. And so Paul wants us to be zealous, but he wants us to be zealous about the right thing. First of all, Paul wants us to be zealous for Jesus in our desire to love him more, our desire to know him more, to serve him, to be like him, and in our desire to share Jesus with others. So I want to ask, well, what particular passions has God given to you? What particular gifts has God given to you? What are you zealous about? Is it sharing God's love with children or with young people? Are you passionate about praying for the persecuted church? Are you zealous for the situation that migrants and refugees find themselves in, for the poor in our community, for those with addictions, for God's world and the environment? If I'd been upstairs with the young people, we'd have probably done the next exercise. You will be relieved to know that I'm not going to do it this morning, although I may incorporate it into home group notes for this week. But to get somebody up and to go around the room and ask everyone else, what are they zealous about? What are they passionate about? Do we actually know? Are we zealous? Are we passionate about anything? Are we able to answer that question? I'm going to pick on Fiona. I know she won't mind. It's too late now. Anyway, I'm not going to get you up, but I'm going to just say that one of the things that Fiona is zealous about is helping people who are in debt out of debt. And you probably know that. Fiona works for a debt charity. If you follow Fiona on Facebook, then every now and again there'll be a post that comes up aimed at flagging up some way in which people who may be struggling financially can find help. She encourages us to pray for people who are struggling with debt. She's done a couple of sessions here in the church to help us and to help us help others who are struggling financially. Zealous to share the love of Jesus and to see lives transformed through debt relief. And so my question is, well, what are we zealous for? What are you zealous for? One of the things that was clear from my sabbatical visiting other churches is that everywhere is struggling for volunteers. No one can exactly say what it is or why it is. Maybe it is that the last 2 years have just worn us out. We're worn down. We're tired. But I wonder whether the last 2 years has put a bit of a dent in our zeal, in our passion, that maybe we're not as zealous, maybe we're not as passionate as we were a couple of years ago. But Paul wants us to be zealous for Jesus. He says, never be lacking in zeal. Serve the Lord with all your heart. I wonder, what are the would you rathers in your life that are stopping you from sharing Jesus' love with others that you will meet this week? Let's pray.